Well, welcome to Guerrilla Discipleship. I'm Kevin Baker.
I'm Tim Parker.
And we are here to continue our conversations about what it looks like to be an everyday disciple maker, to be a person who's a disciple that makes a disciple, however you want to say that. We want to see disciple-making movements happen, which really means that we want to see people impacted by Jesus and it spread wide and long and deep. And we want to see saturation of in the areas that we live. We want to see lots of people encounter the gospel, and even more than just encounter it, we want them to come to know Jesus and walk with him because we believe he's life. So thanks for joining us and for being a part of that. Tim, I had to record without you. I said you were on a field trip. Were you on a field trip or did you lie?
I was on a field trip yesterday. It was, yeah, okay.
Pumpkin patch. So Tim and I were just talking about what we wanted to talk about today, and I asked Tim this question: why does it have to be so difficult? And he said, "What are you talking about?" But basically, why does disciple making have to be so complicated, so difficult? Why does it have to be? It feels like it's very difficult to follow Jesus. Why does this have to be so? Why is there so many disagreements? Why doesn't the church have a unified view? I mean, I could go at this from a million points of view. What makes this so hard is the word that comes to my mind. And so we're going to talk all around that subject for just a few minutes. What makes following Jesus hard? What makes making disciples hard? Why is it hard? Now, maybe you're sitting there going, it's not hard at all. What are you guys talking about? But it feels complicated, feels complex. It feels like we don't all agree. It feels like we're constantly trying to agree and explain things. And so, Tim, what makes it so hard?
I'll go with the answer that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And we can unpack it from there. I think just humans are hard and difficult in general.
Yeah.
We're these organisms, these people created in the image of God, but then we have these experiences, we have the neurobiological chemistry of our brain.
Holy mackerel.
We have, and so I call that like the hardwiring, and then you have, like, if I want to be analytical, like the soft wiring of your heart and the emotions, and we have all these different layers that are built onto it: childhood traumas, reason, philosophical outlooks, worldviews. And so you put all those together, and we're all, I think would agree we're all unique and individual. Yeah. And so you have these things, and we're just complex. We're not simple, like single cell
amoebas.
Amoebas.
We're not amoebas.
They just reproduce and multiply, and that's it. There's not much to it. And I think that's just why it's so hard, because there's relationships, there's emotions, and we all interpret and see things differently. And it's just, we're messy, and on top of that, we're sinful. We're full of sin, and I think that definitely is the icing on the cake, if not the root of all the problems.
I was just going to say, it just as you were talking before you said that, it occurred to me that Jesus, or that God in Genesis said, "Hey, life's going to be hard now. You're not in the garden anymore. You've disobeyed me. You are now living under the shadow of death. And hey, you're going to work, but it's going to be frustrating."
Yeah.
So,
and life's going to be painful.
And life is going to be painful. So maybe that's a good starting place. That disciple making and all of life is not a breeze. It's hard because we are out of our element. We were created for a spiritual reality that we've fallen away from. Everything in this life is a little harder than we would like for it to be. I just was at the doctor with my 92-year-old mom and making tough decisions. And she and I both, as we were driving back, our birthdays are 2 days apart. I'm November 6th, she's November 8th. I'll be 63, she'll be 93. And we were both just talking about, hey, getting older isn't easy. You're either dying or you're getting older, and getting older is not for cowards. So life's hard. Let's start there. Yeah. That the core of this is nothing is easy. Sin's not easy. I mean, it might feel easy at a moment.
It's easy to do.
It's easy to do. But living in obedience to God, trusting God, none of it is easy. Life isn't easy. Jesus told us that it would be suffering, and so if we kind of take that at the base, that it's hard because we're not in heaven, we're not in the garden as the base. Why is disciple making itself hard. Could we focus on that a little bit? Like, what is the hard parts about disciple making in your? Could I actually answer that first?
Yeah, go for it. You can answer your own question.
Can I answer my own question?
Yeah.
Because I always ask you questions and put you on the spot. But
I was prepared that time.
there. Oh, well, go then.
No,
if you're
it's
prepared,
fine. It's fine. You're probably gonna say something similar anyway.
Who knows what I'm going to say?
You.
Yeah, there you go. We are a compliment to one another. I hope. By the way, I'm going to be 63. Tim's 30.
I'm 33. Yeah.
33. 30 years difference between us. You can see. I mean, I know I don't look that much older.
29 and a half.
29 and a half. It seems to me that one of the reasons that disciple making is hard for us is that, let me just say it, is that we've not trained people to do it. Mm-hmm. The church has trained, in the West, the church has sort of cast the idea that we will do the disciple making, the professionals, the experts, the experienced. You come and support us by, being good, faithful Christians, but we'll do it. And some of you we'd like to have partner with us. But it feels to me like on one level, the reason why this is so hard is for many of us, we're changing from being sort of consumers of religion to now being asked to participate in ways that go against most of our brings us up to some of our deepest fears. I'm afraid to have spiritual conversations with other people because they can get angry, or I might not know. I don't want to look foolish. I don't even know. I know what I believe, but I don't always even know why I believe what I believe. And so I don't know that I can defend what I believe. And so lots of fears come into that. Now, that was kind of what comes to my mind as to one reason why it is. What were you?
Lack of training.
Lack of training.
My gut instinct was, and maybe I'm going back to the last step.
To the ball?
Yeah. was relationships are messy. And I think that there's no real discipleship without any sort of relationship, that yelling at someone on a street corner isn't the best form of discipleship, and that's probably the most, and especially American culture, the most offensive kind of a relationship you could have. You very few find people become friends after they yell at each other. Yeah. But it does happen. And then, so once you are in a relationship with someone, it's hard to have a conversation that maybe is uncomfortable for you or uncomfortable for them, or there's just the appearance of discomfort. It's hard to take a conversation into an area where culturally, or we've been kind of conditioned not to go to, or even spiritually we haven't ever had with ourselves or with someone else ever who is also already a believer. And so it's just a whole bunch of discomfort, and we don't want to lose relationships with people because they matter. And so we'd rather just kind of keep our comfort and our mediocre relationships than to press into them.
While you were saying that, Tim, something occurred to me, that getting a bullhorn and standing on the corner this is going to sound weird, in a sense, safer than having a conversation.
It's 100% safer.
Because if you reject me, then I get to say, oh, it's all about you and not about me, or whatever. And I probably, by standing on the street corner with a bullhorn, I've already got my wall up.
Yep.
I got walls up. I'm just on a task. But what we're trying to do in guerrilla discipleship is to make it an organic, relational, conversational kind of thing. That means I have to drop my wall down. I have to actually share the places in my life where I'm not sure, or where I do have questions. I've got to be open to a give and take. You might say something that I disagree with, or you might challenge me. And so this is harder.
You got to invite people into your life. You got to invite discussion. And
you're right. Relationships are hard.
You get to invite someone in. You don't just get to tell them how to live. They get invited in. It's a mutual invitation, and that's dangerous. It's way easier in our current climate to just keep everyone at arm's length.
Oof. So if it's going to be this hard, why should I do it?
I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago,
Did
right?
we?
About maybe not exactly quite that. What's our motivation?
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's motivated by obedience to God or because we love people.
That's good. He remembers everything we talk about.
Not everything, but we talked a little about motivation a couple of weeks ago.
And I feel like I would add to that, and I agree with that. We talked about, is there a heaven and hell? We talked about it, if you want to go back a few weeks and listen to that. Or is it just that I love God and I need to obey what God said? And he said, go into all the world and make disciples. So it's an obedience thing, as well as God cares about lost people that are far from him. But let me ask you, I think we agree on this, but I'll just put it out there. I don't think I can ever grow into maturity unless I practice this. Because, there's something about, we're apprentices of Jesus. We're journeymen, just like an electrician. Yep. And so I don't care how many tests I take about knowledge about being an electrician. I'm not a fully ready master electrician or master plumber until I know how to put the pipe. I've actually got my hands dirty putting the pipes together. So there's something about being engaged in these practices of disciple making that actually help me grow up. Yeah. And most of Jesus's teaching, I shouldn't say most, a lot of Jesus's teaching with the disciples was correcting them. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you say that? No, that's not what, wait a minute. How long am I going to be with you guys? You're supposed to be doing it this way. You should pray more before you do, whatever it is. I'm just
I like that idea of master apprentice, that you can't truly be a real journeyman or master apprentice until you've done not just the test, but all the pieces. And you maybe have done this piece over here, you've done this piece over here, but if you've never done the big, the one thing that you need to do in order to really follow Jesus or really be the apprentice, then you're not really ready to go out on your own.
Yeah.
Or ready to be
Well, and so God's inviting us to a place where we, by being an apprentice of Jesus, by adopting his lifestyle, by following his practices and being obedient to what he commanded, we're becoming like Jesus. I can't become like Jesus. And what's weird about that in our culture, and I'm going to get maybe, I don't know if this is political or not, but in our culture, what you hear all the time today is, well, we should just love everyone. That's the biggest thing that everybody says about Jesus. But Jesus he wasn't just this big squishy,
I call it hippy dippy love.
Yeah, he wasn't hippy dippy love. He wasn't Santa Claus. He wasn't a senile old grandpa that just, like, oh, cute kids. He was fierce. He turned tables over in the temple. He confronted leaders. He would say the hard things to people, and he was loving. Yeah. Because sometimes saying the hard thing to someone is what the most loving thing can be. So we can't grow into the likeness of Christ and experience the fullness of the kingdom unless we're willing to apprentice him in the practices. And Jesus said more than once, things like the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Yeah. I mean, so there's this idea that we've got to practice disciple making. And once you get beyond all the fears, not that we ever get beyond all of our fears. Every time I go out prayer walking, I'm intimidated. I feel the fear of it. I think because our culture tells us that it's something weird. I don't know. But once you begin to practice and you realize that your head's not going to fall off and people aren't going to hurt you, and you've had an experience where God has used you in a conversation, or maybe even used you to help someone come to faith, there's nothing like that.
No.
I mean, when someone says, man, my whole life is turned around because you were willing to share God's love with me, and you see them maybe 10 years later, and they were heading towards a dark path, and now you see them and they're in living such fullness of life, and you had a part in that. You were, a piece of the puzzle in that. I don't know that there's anything more rewarding than that. So, all of this to say, disciple making is going to confront some fears.
Yeah,
it's going to make us uncomfortable. But it's the same in one sense. It is being a journeyman plumber or journeyman electrician, where you're like, man, I don't know how to put these wires together. Well, keep putting them together, and allow your master to show you, hey, that wasn't right. You still don't have it right. You missed this. I love what electricity does for me, but I don't like messing with electricity. And I've been shocked a couple of times. Oh. And I always ask electricians, how many times have you been shocked? And they always call it bit. I've been bit by this stuff a lot of times. And, they're very aware of how deadly it can be. But they don't seem to be as frightened about it as I am, because I think they know, hey, just don't lick your fingers and, touch these two places. Yeah. So what do you think about all of that? Have you gotten to now, again, if you know anything about Mr. Parker here, he's an extrovert, talks to people very easily. But would you say in your life you've seen, man, I used to be very nervous about this or fearful about this, but I feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I would say that even though I've been extroverted for a period of time, I honestly wasn't my whole entire life. It's more relatively recent. This closer to 30 than closer to childhood. Anyways.
Wow.
Yeah,
let's explore that.
Didn't really happen until high school, really.
Really?
Yeah, just kind of something switched.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways, definitely the fear of being rejected or not knowing enough or the nervousness. And it was only maybe in the past, I would say 5 or 6 years, where I really I like to use the word relational equity, realize that it's okay to kind of press into people that you've built in upon and have a relationship with. I've always was afraid of being offensive and being overly offensive because, I'm trying to be politically correct and being biblically wrong and things like that, especially when I was asked in high school to pray for the football team and someone's like, hey, can you please not play to Jesus because I'm Jewish? Things like that. And so I've always kind of like...
What did you do?
I think one time that I did prayed to God, and then a couple weeks later I went back to Jesus.
That's an interesting sometimes thing.
So I think those kind of things kind of like said, okay, well, don't be offensive, Tim. Be respectful of other people's beliefs. And I was just so cautious to never be offensive that eventually I wasn't, I don't want to say I wasn't obvious or I wasn't contagious enough in my discipleship. And so I kind of had to overcome a lot of those pieces. And I also didn't want to be obnoxious like some of the people on the street corner I saw.
Yeah.
And so I was maybe overly corrected. But I've slowly learned through some coaching and through some real life experiences that it's, once you have built a relationship, it's okay to push in a little bit.
Yeah.
And so even earlier today, I was sharing in a coaching call. There is a guy who I have met at with the gym. We hang out once in a while now afterwards. And he more or less said, well, what does the Bible have to say about Israel and Palestine?
Ooh.
And I said, well, let's look at it. Goes,
That's such a simple topic.
Yeah, it was a great one because we were having a great topic. And I said, well, let's look at it. Oh, no, we'll look at it another time. And we kept talking about, great spiritual conversations, definitely going from the casual to the meaningful to the spiritual.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about the scripture and things like that. And then I, at the end of the conversation, like, we can really look at this if you really want to. And normally I wouldn't have offered the first time. And normally I would never have offered the second time. But because he and I have now texted each other and we've, I've given him crabs and we've hung out 4 or 5 times. I'm like, I'm gonna lay into him a little bit hard. Not lay into him, that's probably a bad terminology. I'm gonna push.
You're gonna push in
an extra step harder than I normally would because I think that we're still gonna be friends even if I do this. And even if we're not asking to read the Bible, if it's that offensive, then that was kind of something I would never have done 4 or 5 years ago.
Because you're now a master plumber, and
I'm not sure I'm a master.
You were just a journeyman plumber for a while, and you were scared that you were going to do it wrong. So again, here's the whole point of our conversation with you today. It is complicated, and what I want to say to you is, if it feels complicated, if it feels difficult to you, that's because it is in some respects difficult. Don't be discouraged, and don't think you're the only one that feels like it's complicated. Don't think that we sit here and talk about this like, oh gosh, these guys have no. We may be a step ahead of you. Maybe not. We may be 3 steps behind you, but we may be a step ahead of you. But the only way that we got to be a step ahead of you was to face, confront, and walk through all of the fears that you have, with all of the anxieties that you feel, and to make all the mistakes that you're afraid you might make. We've made them, and we're going to continue to make them. But what we've realized in the end is, it's like getting, it's like those electricians. Yeah, have I ever been, bit by the electricity? Yeah, I have. I thought it was off, or my journeyman told me it was off, and I trusted them, and I'm not doing that again. I've heard that from electricians. Or it was wired poorly, and you actually cut the circuit off, but it was getting juice from another circuit that you couldn't have known until you got into it. So we're all gonna. It is difficult. I'm trying to own that. I think we want to own that with you, that there are some complexities, some difficulties in disciple making. But I think what we want to say, maybe I'll just speak for me, and Tim, you say it your way, but is it's worth it. It's worth it because there are lives hanging in the balance. It's worth it because our Father has asked us to obey him in this. It's worth it because really God is going, it's not a might use you. God is going to use you. If you will put yourself forward as a laborer in the harvest, God will use you. And he says it'll be a 30, 60, 100-fold return. So it's worth it for all those reasons. And so I think we wanted to reassure you and encourage you that difficulty is true, but it's worth the battle.
It is.
Any thoughts?
I think that's wonderfully said. Don't be afraid of the difficult things.
Yes.
I think the most difficult things in life are often the most rewarding. So.
Yes. Marriage. Could we talk about marriage?
Marriage, childbirth,
Yeah. Childbirth. I haven't gone through that one.
I mean, those things are...
Yeah, you're hitting on all the topics. All right. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here at Guerrilla Discipleship. As always, Tim says you can make some comments down below.
Yep.
You can kbaker@oakdale.church email.
tparker@oakdale.church.
Or you know what? If you're a part of Oakdale Church and you see us on Sunday morning, you could just stop and say, hey, I want you to talk about this at Guerrilla Disciple Making or this about at Guerrilla Discipleship. So anyway, thank you so much for being a part of this. We just love that we get to communicate this way. We look forward to hopefully that this is strengthening you in your journey of discipleship and that you're becoming more and more willing to be a disciple maker. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for being with us.